Hi guys, my name is Noni Matikela. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want us to talk about something that happened in that courtroom. Um, Mncube versus the Miwa family. What his testimony really meant at that time. I don't know who came up with the idea that the Miwa family needed to be in that courtroom when the so-called triggerman or gunman was on the witness box, but they played it. Okay, I like how whoever that person is behind that likes to playing that, and then they find out. They play it and then they find out. They play the game and then they find out because what they were trying to play did not go according to the plan that they had. Instead, I am definitely sure it went left. Okay, before we even do that, if you are new in this channel, my name is Noni Matikela and welcome to my Noni M podcast. Today, we are talking about one of the most emotionally charged moments in the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial because this was not simply about an accused person taking the witness stand. This was Mtobisi Prince Mncube giving his version of events, while members of the Meyiwa family, including Senzo's mother, was present in court. They were present in court, okay? And that creates a question that goes far beyond courtroom drama. What did Mncube's testimony actually mean for the state case? Let's break it down, okay? Now, the man in the witness box, when Mncube entered the witness box, he was not simply answering questions. He was confronting the allegations that have connected him to this murder of Senzo Meyiwa since 2020. Okay, he disputes the state's version. In fact, his message is very clear. He disputes the state's version of his alleged involvement. That becomes incredibly important because the state has to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt. Mncube does not have to prove that he is innocent. The state has to prove that he is guilty. That distinction is fundamental. And imagine that happens while Meyiwa's mother was sitting there. In fact, his family was sitting there. It was not just his family, it was his biological mother, his aunt, I think also uncles. They were there, cousin also, if I'm not mistaken. And among those family members, if the mother is present, that should mean something. And the person that organized that was intentional with what they were doing. However, the intention that they have, I don't think they realized that it went left. I don't think so. So for a mother who has waited years for answers, every piece of testimony connected to the circumstances surrounding her son's death carries serious emotional weight. So when Mncube disputes the allegations against him, this is not merely a legal argument. For the Meyiwa family, the consequences are deeply personal. For the Meyiwa family, hearing all of those details once more or however many times is also emotional. But the courtroom cannot decide the case based on emotions. It has to decide the case based on evidence. And that is when Mncube's testimony becomes extremely important. Now, the first big question is, was Mncube actually at the crime scene? This is one of the most important or biggest issues raised by his defense. Mncube's position challenges the proposition that he was present at at the Kumalo residence when Senzo Meyiwa was killed. Think about the significance of that. Um, if the state says an accused person was involved in the crime, then the evidence connecting that person to the crime scene becomes critical. So Mncube's testimony effectively puts the state's evidence under microscope. And imagine that happens in the presence of the Meyiwa family. Where is the evidence placing him there? Who identified him? When was he identified? How reliable was that identification? And perhaps most importantly, can that evidence withstand cross examination? Those are the questions the court ultimately has to answer. And those are the questions the Meyiwa family ended up going home questioning now. Because Mncube, when he explained his appearance, I am light skinned. The people that inside the house said the person that and the people that and the first person that had a firearm was dark skinned, short, dark skinned with short dreadlocks. And when Mncube says I had dreadlocks, long dreadlocks, and the pictures are shown there, and now it's not making sense because the people are listening and are like, okay, this boy, they are looking at him. He says, I've been looking like this. I did not bleach. He did not bleach, guys. He looks like that. Now, that identity question becomes very crucial. And this takes us directly into another major issue, identification by the people inside the house. Throughout this trial, identity has become one of the most important battlegrounds. Who were the people that were inside the house? Who entered? Who was carrying what? Who was where? And how were the accused persons subsequently connected to those individuals? Mnube's evidence puts pressure on that entire identification chain because if there are weaknesses in the way an accused person was identified, the court has to examine those weaknesses carefully, and identification is not automatically reliable simply because somebody says, that's the person I saw. The circumstances surrounding the identification matter. Lightning, time, distance, opportunity to observe, prior knowledge, description given at the time, and whether later identification was influenced by information obtained during the investigations. These are not small technicalities. They can determine whether an identification is reliable. Now, imagine all of that happens during the presence of the family, and they are listening to all of that, and it's not make sure because the man that they are looking at is very light skinned. They are looking at a colored guy. They are looking at a colored guy because Mncube is very light. And now the descriptions and are read in front of them are saying the person that entered is dark skinned. It's not making sense. Now, and here is where perhaps we need to be careful. This is where I want us to separate courtroom analysis from courtroom verdicts. Mnube's testimony is his evidence, it is his version. It is not yet a judicial finding. If Mnube says I was in there, that does not automatically mean the state has failed for now, according to Rata. But equally, the state cannot simply say, we believe he was there. The evidence must establish that connection beyond reasonable doubt. And that's exactly why his testimony matters, because when he asks those questions and gives his account, it dismantles the hell out of everything that was already worked hard on by Ubaloi. Now, the powerful moment, his version against the allegations, what makes his testimony so significant is the contrast. For years, the Meiwa family has been waiting for the truth about what happened to Senzo, and now an accused person is sitting in court challenging the allegations that connect him to that death. That creates an uncomfortable but necessary question. What if the state's theory about Nube's role is wrong? Do you understand that those are some of the questions now that Imeiwa family left that courtroom with? And there is another question. What evidence remains if the court rejects the parts that of the state case connecting him to the crime? Those are questions the defense wants the court to confront. Do you understand that? There is also the mother's presence changes the emotional temperature, right? There is something very human about seeing Senzo's mother in that courtroom because behind every exhibit, every statement, every cell phone record, and every argument about identification is a family that lost someone. Senzo was not an exhibit. He was somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's teammate, somebody's friend, somebody's husband, somebody's father, or people's father, and somebody whose life ended inside that Kumalo house. So when an accused person gives evidence denying involvement, the emotional collusion is unavoidable. But justice requires something difficult. The court must listen to the evidence even when the evidence is painful. Imagine the person that got Umamumeiwa in that courtroom. Mnube's testimony also puts pressure on the investigation. And this is perhaps the bigger story because if there is a dispute about identification, about investigation methods, about statements, timelines, or the way suspects were connected to the crime, when the defense is entitled to challenge those issues. Mncube's testimony therefore becomes part of a much larger question. How did investigators arrive at the conclusion that these accused persons were connected to the Senzo Meyiwa murder? Was the evidence collected properly? Was the identification reliable? Were the accused linked through independent evidence? And can those links survive scrutiny? Those are the questions the court needs to answer when he's busy doing his final analysis. And Mnube's testimony is not the end of the story. And this is where I think of us people that are observers of the case need to be careful. We cannot watch a powerful moment in court and immediately declare that is it, he's innocent. Uh, yeah, we hear the evidence, but as we can see his innocence, it all depends on Judge Ratankosea. Nor can we hear an allegation and immediately declare that's it, he is guilty. Neither approach is justice, none. The correct approach is to ask what evidence supports the allegation, what evidence contradicts it, which version is corroborated, which version contains contradictions, and ultimately, has the state proved its case beyond reasonable doubt? That is the legal test. So, what did Mnube's testimony really mean? It meant that the defense is not simply sitting back and accepting the state's narrative. Mnube is challenging the connection between himself and the murder. He is forcing the court to examine the evidence used to place him within the state's theory of the crime. And with the Meyiwa family sitting in court, those questions became even more emotionally difficult, because everybody wants answers, but wanting answers and proving a crime, a criminal case, are two different things. The Meyiwa family deserves justice, the accused deserves a fair trial, and the court has the responsibility of separating emotion from evidence. Now, the big question is, so here is what I want to leave with you, okay? If Mnube's version creates reasonable doubt about his or his alleged involvement, what happens to the state case against him? And equally, if the state can independently corroborate its allegations against Mnube, can his denial survive evidence? Actually, the state is done with its case and they could not survive, in my view. Of course, I could be biased, but in my view, what I've listened from the state, they have brought nothing in that courtroom that can actually nail anyone. This is, in fact, for me, that is the battle happening inside that courtroom. Not simple Mnube versus the Meyiwa family, but rather Mnube's version versus the state evidence, and ultimately evidence versus reasonable doubt. That is where this case will be won or lost. So can Gininda and Tim and Baloyi deal with it? I am Noni Madikela. This is the Noni M podcast. If you want more courtroom focus analysis on the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and let's continue following the evidence one piece at a time. And remember, we don't decide guilt on YouTube. The court does. Thank you for watching. I'll see you on our next video. Bye-bye. Mwah.